Good start. Had my mic on mute. Very good start. Hang on, let me just boost the settings on that. Okay, Friday morning. Black animation. Already making mistakes. Fantastic. Yeah, good morning. I was just saying there while I was muted, so I was talking to myself. I'm just putting some resources in the description of the video at the minute. So there'll be some of the stuff we're doing today. I've also included some Adobe Illustrator alternatives. And that'll become apparent why I've done that in a little while. I'm just going to grab the survey and put that in there as well. But while I'm doing that, I don't know, I'm just double checking that you guys didn't have any questions based on last week's session, because I know we did quite a bit with the old the plane tool, so we're drawing shapes. We're gonna do some similar stuff today, but we're gonna try and use some more vectors, which is why I've got some alternative software in there as well. So if I'm just gonna copy the link and put that in the description as well. But I thought I'd just go live, see how you guys were doing, and if you've got any questions specifically on any of the stuff we've covered before, or if there's anything you want covered, because this is session 4. I don't know why I'm holding that up as if you don't know what the number 4 is. This is session 4 of 5, so next week is the last one. So if there is anything in particular that you wanted to look at, now would be the time to voice that. And if you're watching this back as well, maybe get in touch with me before next week as well. I am missing a few enrollments as well, but I have said to people that I've got a little like evaluation bit on the bottom, so if you want to wait until the last session, that's fine. Some people have, for the guys who've sent them in, I'll probably just do that little evaluation over email or over the phone, but I'll do that next week after the last session. I haven't edited the title of this one either, which I'm going to now, and I'm just going to call it vectors, or maybe working with vectors. How about that? That sounds good, doesn't it? Sounds like I know what I'm talking about. Save. Okay, cool. So in the description now, if you go in there, you don't have to download it now unless you are doing it alongside what I'm doing. There will be a under resources, there will be a drive link which will have in it a free vector, like a sheet of vectors that someone's drawn, which I got from a website called freepick.com. I think it's freepick.com. Let me double check. Yeah, so it's free pick, but it's the pick is spelled P-I-K, and they have an option to, it's graphic resources for everyone. Why am I not showing it on the screen? What am I doing? Come on. So there you go, free pick, that's the one. Graphic resources for everyone. Find free vectors, stock photos, PSD and icons, so you can type whatever you want in there. If you ever watch any YouTube tutorials or do any animation courses, they always tell you to come to this website because there is just a bunch of free stuff. If you are using any of the assets from there, when you download the file, you'll get a little license document, and if it's free, you'll have to attribute. So as in, you'll have to say, you know, vectors by in the description of like a YouTube video or a Facebook video or whatever. It's probably best to do that because they are giving you it for now, and it avoids getting in any copyright trouble. But for example, if I searched in here car, press enter, I actually clicked on all resources. I can probably go for free and go for vectors and search, and then I'll get a bunch of free car vectors here. So just to show you how you would, obviously this one's a bit more outlined, some of them are animated. You are sort of bound by whatever's on here for free, but there is some really good stuff on there, especially when you are animating. It can be really useful. But to download them, you would just click on it like that, and so it's going to give you in an EPS format, which if you click that, it tells you how to edit an EPS file. So such as, first of all, to be able to edit a vector file, you need a vector editing software such as Adobe Illustrator. I've got that on this computer, and I'm probably going to use it at some point today just to export some little bits of them. If you don't have Illustrator, like I say, I've included a link in the description of Adobe Illustrator alternatives, and I believe one of them is Inkscape, which I'm pretty sure, Charlotte, you recommended in the past. But I'll open that link up now just so you can see what the article looks like. So I'll leave free pick open. So there's a bunch in there. There's SVG. Again, to be honest, to be totally truthful with you, I haven't used any of these. There is a few. There's one for Mac. Obviously, GIMP is one that we've recommended in the past. So that's available on all platforms. I know that people have used that before. OpenOffice Draw, I've really not used. Inkscape is one of the, yeah, so Inkscape's like the second recommended one, but that's only available on Windows or Linux. I'm pretty confident none of you guys are on Linux, but yeah, if you are, that will work on there. But yeah, have a little read through that and see if you can get a hold of one if you haven't got Illustrator to edit the vector files, because basically as you'll know, most of you guys will know, with the vectors you can scale them infinitely, so they're based on like geometry, so the numbers rather than like pixels. Because if you download just a normal PNG and it's say 150 pixels but you need it to be 1000 pixels, when you scale that up it's going to start looking blocky, and if you, especially within animation, you're going to notice it as it moves across the screen. It's going to look all sorts of weird. Yeah, so I'm just going to catch up with the chat before we get properly started and into hit film. So Charlotte, you haven't gotten around to trying any of the animations out, as a little busy with drawing and life. Yeah, fair enough. But definitely trying them out when you get a bit of time. Yeah, that's fine. The videos are going to be here, so just keep coming back. We've got Andy and Amelia in the chat. We've got Gary as well, so morning guys. Also, will there be any courses on vector art, as I'm interested in learning a little bit more? I would like to learn. Okay, that is a question for us, but I will have to ask Ella or Lisa, because they're the two who would be qualified to take a vector art like course. I can edit them. I can edit vectors when someone else has drawn them for animation purposes, but I'm not very good at drawing them myself. So we normally work in tandem when we do any kind of animation, where someone else, either Lisa or Ella, will make them and then I will animate them. That's kind of how it goes at Media Savvy. But it's definitely a question to ask those guys, and I'll see what the crack is with that. My phone's just vibrated, so I'm just going to turn it on to do not disturb. Give us a second. There we go, because that's very rude. The other thing is, can everyone hear me all right? Because I got another warning from YouTube saying that the audio was dropping out, but I don't think it is. I think it's just YouTube being a bit of a funny one. So let me know. But yeah, this is free pick, so that's what the home screen of free pick looks like, and you can search for all sorts of stuff in there, but I would make sure it's on free, because if you try and download one of the premium ones, it'll just start telling you to add a card and stuff, and it's a bit annoying. But they also have photos and Photoshop files as well. I don't actually know what the icons are. I wonder if I just search Facebook and see if they've got any free ones. There you go, they do have some icons. So if you're looking for any bits and pieces, free pick's really good. Just be careful, like I say, when you download it. I've included that in the drive link as well. When you download it, you'll get it'll be like a little license document. So on your license free, you must attribute the image and its author, and it tells you here how you attribute it as well. So you've got your website's printing, and then it'll tell you are free to use this image for both personal and commercial projects, and to modify it. Yeah, it doesn't say in like a video project, but I'd imagine you could link to the file, to be honest, to be like, find the vectors at, and then as long as you've attributed the author as well, the author information will come up on the right hand side, I believe, as well. Yeah, so there you go. So when you click on it, this would be made by Flat Icon, so you would have to attribute them as well. Probably just providing this link would suffice, I'd imagine. But just worth double checking and reading through that information, especially if you're doing something. If it's for your own personal use, you should be all right, to be totally honest with you. If you're uploading it as a commercial project, I would be very careful. You don't want to fall into hot water and land yourself in hot water. I don't know what the saying is, something like that. One of them. So hopefully that makes sense. Sounds good. Okay, great. That's good. Okay, right. Before we get right into the vectors, I just want to recover something quickly, because we're probably going to do it a little bit later on. So we're going to. I tell you what, because we've been on the subject of vectors, I will open the EPS file up and I'll show you how I'm going to just chop and change a couple of the bits. Now this is going to be in Illustrator, and I'm not very good with Illustrator, so I might make a couple of mistakes and have to hit the old Control Z. But when you download your file, and so it'll download as a zip file. So Illustration Business Concept is the one that I downloaded. I haven't uploaded the zip file to the drive. I've just, when I extracted it, so all I did was extract files, and I used a program called WinRAR, and it just extracted it exactly where it was. So I just press OK. Obviously I've already got it, so it's saying, do you want to replace? I'm just going to cancel. I'll just close that. But yeah, Illustration Business Concept is what it should come out as, and you'll have a couple of files. So this one's a JPEG. So if I open that up, that's the list of little vectors that this person's drawn, which are great. To be honest, these are really good little icons, and you can do a lot with them. There's a lot to animate and sort of move around, and quite a good range, especially if you're doing like an infographic sort of animation. So there's like little pie charts and dollar signs and coins and money and all sorts of nonsense like that. So there's also this like button, which gets quite abused online. Like little graphs and stuff, and like pictures and the world. You know, it's always good to have the world. The battery one I'm going to do something with later as well. I'm going to show you guys how to set up like a little effect with that as well. So with that in mind, that's the JPEG. So I can't really do anything with that because it's one flat image. It's all them are connected to each other, and I can't really do much with it. So I'm going to open up the EPS file. So just right click. I could open it with Photoshop, but that'll rasterize the. Well, I'll show you what it does. Just so you don't get confused. So it will open in Photoshop, but what it'll do when it eventually loads is it'll say rasterize EPS format. Now that's no good, because when we rasterize it, if I press OK on that, that becomes again one layer. So they're all now one combined layer, which is, I could come in and I could cut them out and I could remove the white background and save it as a PNG. If that was the only way you could do it. So if the only access you had was to go into, say, Photopea, import this as an image, and then, you know, crop out, say, that, and Control X to cut it, and do a file anew, and paste it in there, and then, you know, you could say take out the white on the background, and then you could save that as a PNG. However, the reason I'm not going to do that is the image size. So can you see there, 111 width by 123 pixels. If I start scaling that up, it's going to get blocky because it's no longer a vector. It's now become a flat image, like a rasterized image. So it's using pixels rather than like the vector format. So where possible, try not to open your EPS in Photoshop or Photopea. What you'll want to do is open it in Illustrator or one of the other vector editors, which again, I've provided a link to the free versions in the description. That's the word. Oh, Sue's here as well. Sorry for the tardiness, the bottle of peach snaps. Yeah, I'm glad you had a good birthday then. Sounds like it was a good one. So yeah, I'm going to open the EPS format, the file in Illustrator. Now, it looks the same. It looks like they're all one, but what I have access to now in Illustrator is all of the paths. And what the paths are is the shape itself. So if I want the let's say the shield, for example. Oops. So what I would do is I would just double click on it, and can you see isolate that path? So if you want to isolate a path in Illustrator, you just double click, and then I can say highlight that, and I can Control C so I can copy it, or edit and copy, and go to File and New, and create a new document, and I can go to Edit and Paste or Control V, and that'll paste that in there. But now if I hold down my shift key and go from the corner, can you see I can scale this up now, and it's not going to go pixelated because it still recognizes it as a vector. So it still recognizes it as a vector format. So I can bring that out and scale it up as much as I want, and it should be all right. Yeah, looking good. So I'm not going to actually do the shield, so I'm just going to close that. So I will recap on that quickly. So I tell you what, let's shut down Illustrator again, and we'll go back. So EPS file. I'm going to right click on it, open with Illustrator, and this is where you guys would bring it into one, like say something like Inkscape or SVG editor. It should open in there. So we'll let Illustrator load itself up, and we'll just say yes to that. Now I don't know how well you can see this because of the banner, so I'm just going to reposition the window a little bit if I can. Will you allow it? Yes, yes you will. Oh god, the lag. No. Okay, we're getting a bit of lag here. Cool, so you should be able to see that a little bit better now. Okay, cool. So that, like I was saying before, this is all these paths are separate. So to isolate one of them that I just want to pick, let's save the battery. So I'm just going to double click on the battery, and can you see it highlights that path. So each one of these is grouped together. So someone's drawn these, I'm assuming in Illustrator, either using one of the shape tools or you can use the brush tool and the pen tool and all that kind of thing to create a path. I imagine that's just a set of shapes because it's quite a simple design. I'm going to edit. No, I'm going to highlight them all, sorry. So I'm going to click and drag over them. I'm going to edit, and I'm going to copy that. And I'm going to go to File, and then I'm going to go to New. Now, I might want to change the width, because at the minute, that's putting that on an A4 canvas, which I'm not particularly fussed about. So I might change that to pixels. And I might just drop this on a 500 by 500 block. Why is that not added the PX on the end? Yeah, okay. So that's a 500 by 500 pixel canvas, and then I'm going to edit and I'm going to paste that in there. And if you remember, when we're scaling up, we need to grab our shift key, otherwise this will happen. So undo that, hold down the shift key on your keyboard and just drag that up there. So with this one, if I was animating like a battery icon, so say I was 2 seconds. I just want to make sure I haven't done anything stupid, which wouldn't be the first time. Okay. Yeah, okay. I can probably as well, if I wanted to change any of the individual assets, I could ungroup them and then click onto that, and I'm guessing I could change the, yeah. So I could change the color and stuff if I want to do. For now, for this first bit, I'm not going to bother doing that. But you do have access, so you can sort of highlight them, right click, I can ungroup them, which will make them all separate assets. And if I double click on one a few times, can you see I'm isolated this panel here, and I could say change the color to black, for example, and then click out of it. But I don't want to do that. I just want to leave it sort of as is for now. And I've again highlighted the lot. I've scaled it to the point I want it to be within a 500 by 500 sort of canvas. And with this one, I know I want 3 different states of it, possibly 4 actually. Actually no, we'll go with 3. So this would be representing the battery being full. If I double click on that, so what I probably want to do actually is save this first. So this would be when the battery's full. So if I do File, and I believe it is Export, and I'm in the wrong folder, so I'm just going to drop that in the vector one, and I'm going to change the format to a PNG, and I'm just going to call that battery dash full. Save that. So it's going to export with a transparent background. Yes, that's fine. 72 resolution because it's for screen display. Background color transparent. I'm going to OK that. I might have made a bit of a mistake here, so give me a second. Oh no, that's fine. So then I might want to, if I remember, double click this to highlight certain parts of it, isolate certain parts of it. So double click, and then I might want to delete that one out, and then double click to come out. So that's representing it where it's 2/3 full. So I might want to export that as a PNG, and instead of battery full, we'll call it battery 2/3. Okay, and then we might want to double click on the middle one, and you might want to delete that. Yeah, and then double click to get out, and then we'll do file and export, and we'll go battery, call that battery 1/3. And the reason I'm saving multiple states to this is because it makes it easier to animate, so we can have it where we're going to create the effect of it charging up. So we've done that. We could also possibly have one where this changes to red, as in representing that the battery's almost about to run out. So again, we would just double click on that. Let's have a look at the I'm just trying to think of, like, maybe you want it like that. So can we do a custom color? It doesn't want the hex code in there though, that's the only problem. Now this is where my color blindness comes into effect. Okay, so why are you not applying to that then? Yeah, there we go. So we can have that, and then we can do file and export, and we can probably save over that one. So when it gets to 1/3, we want it to change to red. Yeah, in fact, no. Right, so if we were doing it like it was charging up, we'd have the battery 1/3, that would be the first one. Then we'd have, you know, the little animation it sometimes plays when your battery is charging up. So I'm going to save this one as separate. So I'm going to save this one as battery, let's call it critical. I'm sure that's what pops up on an Android phone. So it's like giving you like critical alert, as if like the world's capitulating on itself. So we'll save that as well. Okay, so just to recap, I opened me big horrible EPS document with all these paths in it, all these paths which are the shapes. I double clicked on one of them to isolate that, highlighted it all, copied it. Yeah, so edit copy or Control C, and then I created a new canvas, new document, and I made that 500 pixels. Yeah, so I had it set the pixels 500 by 500, and then I pressed OK, brought it in here, I scaled it using shifting from a corner, and then I just deleted various parts of it out. And I can probably undo everything I've done by just pressing Control Z and bringing it all back. But now, if I go into my vectors folder, can you see I've got various states of that vector, which is why it's useful to have the path. So it's useful to be able to edit the path, because I can edit how the vector itself looks. So how the battery in this case looks. So we've got sort of 4 states of it now, which can be good if you're trying to create like a little animation from it. So I'm gonna close down Illustrator for now. I will be coming back to it probably after the little break, but we'll see how we get on. So I'm actually not going to save any of the changes I made there. You might want to, might help you out a little bit more, but I'll clear the data on there, and I will minimize that. And all I'm going to do now is create a. Actually, I don't need to create a new one, but I'll show you how you would. Remember, so you've got your new and open. When you open HitFilm, you can also go to file and new, and it'll pop up here. So as always, 1080p 25 frames. You could change it to 24, it really doesn't matter. Remember, that's just the number of frames in a second, so the more frames you have tends to be, a lot of the time, the smoother your animation is going to be. This one isn't anything complicated, so it's just a battery. It's like charging up. So with that in mind, I'm just going to leave it on the default of HD 1080p full HD 25 frames per second. That's set to 5 seconds. I think that might be 5 seconds should be alright actually. 1920 1080 25 frames, square pixels. Leave the audio as it is. Okay. And then the great loading will take place, and it'll probably crash because it always manages to. And now we've got a blank project, yeah. So remember, you don't do any animating on the editor. The editor's like your video editing timeline, like what you'd have in, say, Premiere. To create an animation, remember, you create a composite shot, which is the little button down the bottom there, or right click and new composite shot. If you're feeling really adventurous, you've got Control Shift and N, which will do it for you, which I quite like. I'm going to call this battery charge, something like that, yeah. So we okay that. So I've got my new composite shot. It's got nothing in it at the moment, nothing's happening. So if we want the battery to be charging, we would have to import that media that we just made. So if we go to import, and then not the desktop, this is where it pays to have a good file structure and keep your files in the right place. Yeah, so animation course, mine is under, and then I've got vector. So I've got 1, 2, and 3. Yeah, so I can just hold down Control and press on them ones, and it'll bring them all in at once. Yeah. So if I wanted to start charging from sort of 1 bar, I would bring that in there. I would possibly scale it up a little bit to 200. Yeah, so we'll double it in size. So drop down the transform, go down to scale. Remember, click in that box. You can type any number in there you want. So we'll have it on 200. We will also select the layer. Remember, you've got your layout palette, like panel over here. If you don't see that, if you go up to window and you'll have this layout, it might be unticked. So you see, if I untick it, it's not there. I go to window, make sure layout is ticked. I will get my layout box there. And this is where I'm just going to center align it. So align to timeline, and then there's the 2 middle ones there. So I think it's actually dropped on in the center, but if it's not, so say for argument's sake, if you dragged it in and dropped it there, you click on the layer, come to layout, click on the 2 middle buttons, and that'll just drop it in the middle of the timeline there. And then I'm going to bring in battery 2/3 and put that above, and then set that to 200 as well. So doubled it in size. And then battery full, I'm going to bring that over the top and drop that one down. Transform, scale, 200%. Yeah, so we've got 3 layers on there, but each one is just doing something like that. Yeah, so at the minute, if I scrub through my timeline, nothing's happening. There's no motion whatsoever. To give it a little bit of motion, we're going to have a little tweak with, remember, it's got like each layer will have its own block. So can you see this grey line, and when you select it, it'll go blue. But if I go to the end of the grey line, so the battery full, for example, if I go to the end of the line now that it's highlighted, and if I hover on the end, I'll get a little left to right arrow. Click and hold on that, and can you see that's changing the length of that line? Now what that line represents is when that's visible. So when that top layer of it being full is visible, if I drag it to the end, obviously that's where my timeline marker is now. So when this marker here is over this block, that full battery will be visible. Once I go past it, it'll drop. Yeah, so that's what these blocks represent. So these represent when it's visible on screen. So this one, so if I turn the other 2 off for now, so just using the little eye. So this one on the bottom is the 1/3 sort of charged one that we created. So it's where it's just got 1 block. So we probably want that one to be visible for the entire, what is it? How long have I set this to? 5 seconds or something, or 30 seconds? Right, hang on. Okay, we need to trim down this. 30 seconds is far too long for this animation. So I think we'll just we'll take the timeline marker to 5. Yeah, so I'm on 5 seconds there. Remember, you can click in here and type in whatever you want. So I could take that to 10 if I wanted. Click in there, take that to 5. Yeah, so I'm going to just take the timeline marker to 5. And then I'm just going to get all these individual blocks and just drag them down so they match my timeline marker there. Like that. So at the minute, over the course of 5 seconds, if I just play it, nothing's really happening. Yeah, so they're switched off. Yeah, but even if they were switched on, over 5 seconds, nothing's happening. Got no motion, got no movement. So I'm going to expand my timeline out a little bit so I can see the seconds a little bit better. And what I'm going to do now is we want the 1/3 one to be 2 seconds. I haven't trimmed that down yet. So I also, if I'm changing the length, I want to drag the seconds along the top as well to come in. And can you see that's graying out bits over here, which means they won't play and they won't be exported. So I'm just doing that to the selected area of 5 seconds. Yeah. So after 5 seconds, everything should disappear. Yeah, that's the length I want that animation to be. Okay, so we've got the second markers along the top. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then after that, it's all grey. Yeah. A little bit confusing, that one. But basically, for the length of this animation to play through, we want the battery 1/3, so the first bit, to be visible. Let's go say 12 frames in. So remember, we've got our frame controls here. So where my mouse is, that little circle you should see, it's like a little arrow, and it's next frame. So I press that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, so I'm going to go 10 frames in, and then I'm going to move this battery 2/3 block to match that. Yeah, and then I'm going to go another 10 frames in. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And I'm going to drag the battery full block to match that. So at the moment, what it's going to do, yeah, so it's doing that. But then what we need to do is they need to then disappear. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I need to drag the battery 2/3 to there and the top one to there. So at the moment, what that's gonna look like. Yeah. So then we need to loop that. So that needs to happen again. So after another 10 frames, so that disappears. Yeah. That's the last frame of them both being on, and then I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And I don't need to duplicate the first third of this, and that's because that's constant throughout. So can you see that's just going from the start to the finish? So the battery full and the battery 2/3 with these blocks, I'm just gonna do Control and D, and that's gonna add them to the top. Now they're gonna play. At the moment, those blocks are exactly aligned in the same place. So if I just drag those along to there, what that'll do is it'll play. If you play it through, yeah. So it's just looping that animation. So it's just these first 3 blocks, or these first 3 layers, are just having the first third play for 10 frames on its own. Then after that 10 frames, the second one comes in for 10 frames. Yeah, so this is appearing for 10 frames, and then the third one comes in for 10 frames, and then there's a 10 frame gap in the middle where it's just the first one again. And then what we've done is duplicated those two, so that after another 10 frames, the animation plays again. Yeah, and we'll just keep doing that until we've hit the 5 second marker. So select those layers again. We'll jump 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 frames ahead, and we'll Control D, which will duplicate it. Remember, it'll drop it exactly on top. So we just want to drag those like that to match where my timeline marker is. Again, go at the end of that. Go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and Control D. Drag those blocks out. And to be honest, I haven't done the maths properly, but that should generate that effect quite nicely. So if I just play that through, yeah, so you've got like a charging effect. And you could sort of, now that that's a pre-composition as well, that can go in any kind of other. So say you had a bit of footage that you took with your camera, so you've recorded a video, yeah, and you want to do like a nice overlay, so you know, like the old-fashioned, well, not old-fashioned, but like the camera overlays that you get where the battery's in the top right, or you're creating like a mock-up phone screen, but you want it to look like it's charging. This is how you would do it. So you'd separate out your vector images into separate parts. So you've got different like different states, you would call it in animation. It's like a sprite, maybe you would see it explained as. So you've got different states of these animations. So one's where 1/3's charged. The second one, if I drag it along, so this block is where it's 2/3, and then if I drag it along to the next block, that's where it's 3 out of 3. Yeah, so it's full. And then you're leaving a little gap, so it looks like it's dropping back down to 1. So that's what that little gap's doing there. So the gap in between here, where there's nothing but the bottom one playing, that's so that it counts up and then back down. So it goes 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Yeah. Let me know if that makes sense, guys. So you're controlling. You're not particularly even really doing an animation here. It's more of like, well, it is an animation, but nothing's moving, nothing's transitioning. It's just you're playing things in a certain order after so many frames. So it's a little bit of like a trick using a vector image and isolating different parts of it, which can be really effective, like I say. So if we just play that through one more time. So that should hopefully make perfect sense to you guys. I'm fingers crossed. We're here, but just a little bit behind as we're doing it on computer as we go along. Yeah, if you need to pause it and go back, that's fine. So that effect there, I believe, is called like Sprite Animation. And I'll tell you exactly what I mean by that. Often used in like video games, but basically I'll show you like a sprite sheet. I'm trying to find one. So the classic one with a sprite is like the game characters when they're moving. So instead of them having like one character, and when they're doing like a movement, them physically moving the different parts. So you know, when you can click onto a layer and you can move it around and you can change the path. Instead of that, you can work from like a sprite sheet, is what that's called. So if I grab this one just to show you, I'm not going to download it, but I'll just show you. Can you see there, this one here? So it's got this character, and it's got they've drawn each state of them moving that they just play, like sort of a couple of frames after each other, like this. So they have the blocks represented, and that'll be how you'd animate him walking. So you've got like your different stances. So ours isn't as complicated as that because it's literally 3 versions of a battery. But you can play them in a certain order, like that, to make it look like it's charging up. Yeah, if you know, you can do this with any of those examples on that EPS file. So I picked the battery because I knew I could do this one quite simply. There is, if I go into it again and open it up again, there's loads of other ones that you can isolate different parts of. You might not even want to, do you know what I mean? You might just want to export one, but I'm just showing you that it is possible to have a very basic animation there. So you're essentially telling it at that time, I want you to display, at this moment in time, I want you to display just the 1/3. Then at this moment in time, when this block comes in, 2/3. Then at this moment in time, when the 3rd block comes in, and then we have a little gap to just be in one block. You could even go one further and have it be empty and go 1, 2, 3, empty, 1, 2, 3. But I just thought I'd keep it nice and simple with that one. So give that a go. One of the other important things that you get a hang of is using your vectors, like isolating the different paths as well. So let's have a look in here. So back in this EPS document. We might try something with the pen in a minute as well. I'll probably do that one after. I'm going to have a little break just to get set up for the next bit, because we're going to go back to masks as well and how we can use both. What I would say is having a look in here. Where is it? I'm just looking to separate parts of it out, that's all. So again, like I was saying, if you were trying to display something or get a message across, like having a little pie chart, you could isolate. Oops, I've done that again, after that twice. So you double click on it to isolate. Oh, sugar. Double click on it, isolates the path. You can hover, like click and drag over it, and probably Control C to copy, or edit and copy. Do a file in new. Mine's still set to 500 by 500, which is all right. If it's not, all you do is just change the units to pixels and then type in the amount you want. I'm just going to keep it nice and simple. I think I've just realized when I did that, actually, I've got the color mode set to CMYK, which I actually want to just change to RGB, and I want the raster effect to be 72. I'm just going to OK that and paste that in there. Shifting from a corner, scale that up. And you can isolate parts of this path and remove them. So you could say, like, take this bit out and have that sort of animate in, and then you could have these two like slide in from the top if you were trying to like present some data, for example. I'll tell you what, I'll quickly do that just to illustrate how to do it again. So just to repeat the process. So I would probably save it all as one. So export, file and export. Change that to PNG. We'll call that chart full. Yeah, and then I would maybe do one where it's double click, sometimes not working. And maybe do one where it's just the one, if it's going to let me. Yeah, double click and delete. See, these are individual paths, so this one's going to be a little bit more complicated to delete, but we'll do that. So where it's just this like chunk of it. So file and export, and that one will be chart. Oh, can't spell chart. Chart top. It makes it sound like you've got like a hit single coming out, but it's not. So I'm just going to Control Z all them, come up with that, and delete that bit. And then file and save as, not file and save as, it's file and export. Chart. We'll call that lines, I guess. What you could do if you wanted to be super, like a big show off, would be export them all individually, the lines, and you can have them like slide in like a grid. But I'm not going to do that just because I don't think I've got time this morning. It would look quite nice though if when it animated in, you know, it had each one of these lines came in all together. Sorry, not all together, all separately. But we'll avoid that for now. So we'll just call that chart lines, PNG. Save that. And I think we need one where it's just the. Let's have a look to be exported. No, so we need one where it's just the like the main pie chart bit as well. We'll click on the paths if it will let me. Probably highlight them. Yeah, there we go. So just this bit, this sort of looks a little bit like Pac-Man now. So I'm just going to export that and I'm going to call it chart Pac-Man. And I know what it is. And I'm just going to, again, you don't have to close Illustrator, but I'm just going to close it because I don't want it to lag me computer to death because I've got a lot of high-end programs open. So just so I can clear my workspace a little bit, I'm going to put all this in a folder as well. And I'm just going to call that folder battery. So to create a folder, you go to the bottom right, bottom left even, left folder, and you just click on it and it'll create a new one. I've accidentally created a subfolder which I didn't want to do. But then to put stuff in that, you just select it. So you hold down press on that one, hold down Control and just click on the layers you want. Just drag that into that folder, which you can then collapse, and can you see that frees up a bunch of space here, especially if you're doing a really complicated animation or video project and there's like 4 million things in it as well. It gets a bit stressful because this panel's tiny. And what I'm going to do now, this battery charge pre-composition that I made before, just going to close that, take me back to the editor. So I'm sort of at a blank window again. I'm going to right click and import, or you can just click on the import button there. Either way, and I'm going to bring in the different parts of my chart. So I'm just holding down Control and pressing on them all. And then I'm going to make a new composite shot. So remember, Control, Shift and N, or composite shot, or right click, new composite shot. So I'm going to try my keyboard shortcut. Yeah, 30 seconds. That's far too long, so we might just want to make that not 50. Oops, 5. 05, and okay, and then we'll just drag in, again I'm just going to select all this, drag that in there. So chart full, I'm going to scale these up a little bit. So I'm going to drop them down. I'm going to go to transform. I'm going to go to 200 pixels again, so it's a little bit bigger. I'm going to do the same on every layer. So I'm going to just double them in size. Drop them down, transform, scale, 200%. So you're doubling it in size, yeah. Press enter. Okay, so at the moment this looks awful. What I'm going to do, the chart full, so that's the full chart itself. If I turn all the layers off, you'll be able to see. I'm going to leave that in there, but I'm going to leave that in there as a guide so that I know where these need to finish. But I'm just going to reduce the opacity of it and use it as a guide layer. So I'm just going to turn the opacity down to 25%, so it's there like an outline. And then that is now obviously in the wrong place because I've exported it on its own. But I can probably bring it across like that and match it up to where it's supposed to be, like that. The other bit, so that again is slightly, can you see there's a little, you probably can't see it, but there's a little grey outline, which means that again just needs to have a little slide over there like that. And the lines are completely in the wrong place, so again using my guide layer, that's on 25% opacity on the bottom, just bring them up like that. I can see it. And what it might be worth doing is that chart full on the bottom that I'm using as my guide, might be worth just turning the opacity up to say 50 instead, so we can actually see if we're overlapping anymore. But it looks to me like I've dragged them into roughly the right place. Yeah, because can you see there, that's where it should be. So that outline there is where it should be, and that's where it is. So we can just drag that. So if you do get your layers all mixed up, muddled up and in the wrong place, as long as you've got the full version. So when you're chopping up your vectors, if it does what it's done on mine, where things end up in the wrong place, what you can do is you can bring the full image in, and as long as they're the same scale, so these are all set to 200%, which is double the size I brought them in at, you can reduce the opacity of the full one to half, and then you can turn the other ones back on and just drag them so that they'll sit in the correct position. Be careful with it, because it will, the more difficult the shape is, the more difficult it will get. But basically what that allows me to do, having this in 3 parts, is animate them in separately. So you could have them all start, say, off the screen. So if I go to, if I take my timeline marker to 1 second and I set a keyframe on the chart top, so that's this bit here, so I set a keyframe of its position here, yeah, and I'm going to do the same on all 3 of the layers. So not that I'm going to change this one's name to guide, so I'm not going to put any keyframes on the guide layer, okay, ignore that. Chart top, which is this little pizza slice here, and I've set my keyframe to, I want it at 1 second, in the composition I want it to be here. The chart Pac-Man, which is the little Pac-Man cut out there, at 1 second in my composition, I want it to be here. So I'm setting my keyframe, yeah, on position. And I'm going to do the same on the chart lines, which is that dashed line outline sort of thing. I'm going to set my keyframe on position. If you cannot see that, it's under transform, position, drop a keyframe in. Okay, so now I'm going to scrub back in the timeline to 1 second. And at 1 second, the chart lines, I want them to start from off the screen. So position, as long as I've got my selection tool there, I can grab that right facing red arrow, just drag that off the screen. Yeah. So now that's coming into place there. The chart Pac-Man, I can do the same, except I don't want it to be coming from the right. So the chart line's coming from the right there. I want this to be coming from the left. So got my Pac-Man layer selected. I'm going to drag that to the left, like that. And the last but not least is the top, the little pizza slice there. So at 0 seconds, which is where I'm at now, I want this to come from the top. Yeah. So now they've all got two keyframes in each. It's just bringing the chart together like that. And that's a little bit more of an interesting way of putting a chart together. And that's a dead basic animation. There's a bunch of other stuff you can do on there. I am conscious of the time though. One other thing to bear in mind is when you've set your keyframes for that, now this guide layer, I don't really want that on there anymore. So I can just turn that off like that when it plays in like that. Yeah, they all just come together. I might have just pressed the wrong key there and undone a bunch of stuff. Oh no, I haven't. Remember, simple little effects as well are to say right click and go to options and put the motion blur on all of them. So right click, options, motion blur, right click, options, motion blur. And I think if I change my hang on, playback quality final. Okay, so if I render that, it might not do it in the render preview because it is a little bit annoying that way. But if I was to export it, you should see the motion blur applied. Yeah, so like I was saying, you know, you might have the two top ones. What might be quite nice, I'm not going to do it now, but what might be quite nice to just take that to the next level is have those two drop in like that, and then because that's like a dashed line, have those lines animate in from say behind this Pac-Man shape. I'm not going to show you that this morning because that will take a little bit more time, but it's just something to think about. Changing, so instead of say you were doing an animation and you had like a graph of I don't know, like 100% of the people were really impressed by me work or whatever, or 96%. So you had a graph explaining 96%. It might be good to chop it up, to draw it in Illustrator or Inkscape or whatever, draw it, separate it out into its different pieces, and then have it animate in. So it's a little bit more appealing to the eye. It's a little bit more interesting than just a flat, you know, graph on the page. You could have that animate in, and then you can even, remember, it's quite easy to add text to it as well. So let's just add a couple of text layers in. So if I add a text layer in, and we'll call that happy, and I'll go to my text property options down here. Yeah, I need to select that text, I think. Just highlight it all. I'm going to change the font to something else. I've got a bunch of awful fonts installed on this computer, so you will just have to bear with us for a minute. Oh god, there's some really bad ones. Yeah, there we go. Stay on brand. We'll do Media Savvy Gill Sans. And we'll just rename that to happy. And we will duplicate it as well. Control D or right click and duplicate. And then on the second one, we're just going to move it. We're going to shift it across. And we're going to call that come on now, behave. Sad. Make all caps actually. Yeah, any font but not Comic Sans, definitely not. Unless you're doing something that you want a comic book effect on, in which case Comic Sans is your friend, because that's what it was made for. So like if you're doing like a little graphic novel animation and you want like a little bar along the bottom saying like meanwhile or whatever, or like you know, I don't know, Batman was sad because his parents died or something, I don't know. You might want Comic Sans. It might work quite well. So I'm just going to position these roughly where I want them to sort of pop up. And again, my alignment's not the best here at the moment, but it's just because I'm sort of messing around. Spend as much time as you want getting them aligned properly. What I might want to do, just to spruce this up a little bit, I'm just going to turn the text layers off for now. I'm going to create a line that animates in and out. So I'm going to do new, plane. I'm going to set the width to 1920 1080, but I'm going to set the height to 1. Oh, hang on, 1 might be a little bit, that might have been a bit ambitious, that one, like. Okay, I'm gonna undo that. That was 1 was a little bit ambitious. So new layer, plane. I'm gonna make the color white, and I'm gonna make the maybe 10. Yeah, 10's better. That's a lot better. Right, so I've created this plane line that's just in the middle of nowhere. What I'm gonna do with it is rename that layer to be line. I'm gonna call that line 1 actually. So I'm gonna have 2 of them. I'm going to drop that down and drop down transform, and I covered this last week when we did a little map activity, but I'm going to unlink the scale on line 1. So at the moment it's got this like chain link here. Undo that, and whoops, undo that link, yeah, and this left property here, if I hover over it just says scale, but the left one is your left and right. So can you see now that I've unlinked the scale, when I click and drag this, it drags it just left and right. If that was linked, so if the link was on, it's going to scale it proportionally. So when it scales left and right, it'll also scale up and down, but we don't really want that to happen. So I'm just going to unlink that. I'm going to drop it in a little bit, so it's like that, and then I'm going to zoom in and just show you. So what we're ideally looking for here is this line to come out and like annotate the diagram that we've got. So if I just scale to fit. So at the moment that line's like in a straight line, so that blue square there, just grab that and rotate it a little bit. Now because I want to animate it as if it's annotating the diagram, I want to make sure that it overlaps a little bit, yeah, and I want to have it say like that. But I also want it to appear, so I don't just want it to pop on the screen. I want it to animate as if it's coming off the diagram. Now at the moment, if I do the scale, can you see it's scaling from the center? Which, if you remember last week, I said we just need to change the anchor point, which is a little bit further up. So if we drag that, so can you see that's the anchor point there? So that's the point now that it'll animate from. Ideally, your anchor point wants to be, if you try to do something from the edge, you want to match it up with the edge. So if I want this to grow from this edge, the anchor point needs to be here. Yeah, so if I just do that, move it along a little bit. So now when I scale it, it should be scaling from that anchor point there. Yeah, does that make sense? I hope so. We'll do it slightly inside so that it doesn't like end up overlapping. So we'll bring that up there. Do the scale. So it's scaling from, so when I have it on 0, he says as he makes it -2. When I have it on 0, you can't see it. It's like it's not there. Yeah, there's no line there because it's on 0. But then if I change that to 10, it'll grow. So that's it grown from that point there. Yeah. So we want it to start on 0 always, because we want to make that illusion that it's grown out from there. So we don't want it to start animating until after these objects have come in. So there, we'll leave it so that at 1 second, I believe, yeah, is exactly when they hit. So we'll give it a little gap of say 1, 2, 3 frames, 3 frames, and then on the line plane, we'll set a keyframe for the scale, and then we'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 frames ahead. This can change as well, and then we'll just do a scale to say there. Yeah, so all that's doing then, so let's play it through. Yeah, so that line animates a little bit quick, so I might want to make that 12 frames. So I know that the gap between these two keyframes here is 12. 10, 12. So I'm going to make it, sorry, it's 6. It's not 12, it's 6. So the 6 frames gap in between these two keyframes. I might want to double that. So I'll go to the last one and go 6 more frames using my next frame button. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, and just drag that keyframe to be in line. So now, if I play it through, yeah, so it's just growing out a little bit slower. And then, what I probably want now, so I'm just going to rename that because that's the sad. That's the happy. Yeah, so I've got me happy text layer. But I don't want that to appear until after that line. So you see, that's just going to be there the whole time. So I don't want that to appear until after that line has got to that point. So when that line hits that point, I want this text to sort of pop in. And I'm just going to move it there. So if I drop down my text, and if I go back, say, 2 frames, and go to transform, I'm going to set a keyframe for my opacity, but I'm going to set it to 0, so it's not visible. And then I'm going to go back 2 frames and I'm going to set it to 100. So what that'll do, yeah, and again, that's quite a quick, because there's only 2 frames in between that, so I might want to increase the distance between those 2 opacity keyframes so it fades in slower. Yeah, so there's a gentle fade like that. And obviously that if it was actually a pie chart that you were doing, that would be I'm trying to think how to describe it, like a stat. That would be like a stat or a percentage or whatever it is that this part of the graph represents. We could even just rotate this around a little bit so it comes a little bit further down there, and just shift the text down just a touch and across to the right so that it's in the middle. Yeah, so we'll play that through again. Yeah, and then so that's the bottom text has come in there. So that's the point there when that opacity hits 100, that bottom text is now visible, that happy text. We can probably do the same for the one on the top. So if I'm going to duplicate the line, it's just going to be called line 2. And if I go to my transform, I've still got those scale options there, but I'm just going to move it up to the top. Oh, what did I do there? I dragged on the wrong layer. Okay, so make sure you get your arrows, and we'll rotate that round just a tad. We'll bring that to there. And at the moment, we need to highlight those keyframes on this line 2, take them across to there. Yeah, now I have a feeling we just need to flip this around, because at the moment, can you see, because I've copied it from this one, it's animating in to that. So we just need to change the angle, so we can actually delete these keyframes, to be honest. But if I go back to the first one, let me delete them. So I want to set a keyframe for my scale. But I want to move its position, so I want to get that anchor point, so it's where I wanted to. Remember, I set that anchor point to where that line's going to start animating from. So that's where it's going to start animating from, and I've set a keyframe for my scale. But if I just go minus this time, so it goes the other way. So plus is taking it that way, so plus is taking it down this way. If I go to a minus figure, it'll go the opposite way. So I believe I left 12 frames. So I'm on the first keyframe, that's 0. I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 frames across. And I'm going to go into the minus figures, and I'm just going to take it -9. I've put it on there. You could type that in, so you know when it's on 0 there, you could click in that box and do -9, and that would take that out. Like that. I'm just going to check what the rotation on that other line is. It is -33.5. So do we want that on minus 33.5 as well? Probably minus 35. So this is just changing the angle. Put it on minus 40. So at the moment, I'll play it all the way through. Now I've animated that second line to annotate that, but I just need to do the same thing I did with the other text. So actually, what might be better is to duplicate this happy text and just take it up and move the keyframes, because that's going to be quite an easy edit. So if I right click on that happy text and duplicate and just rename it to sad, and then what I can do is just move it up to here, get it in a rough position. If I go to my, there's a little like a capital A, which is a text tool, and because I've got it selected and I've gone to that tool, it just lets me edit it, and in all caps just going to type in sad, just align that with where I want it to appear. And if I go to the sad text there and transform, it'll have two keyframes that are copied from, so that would mean it would animate in at the exact same time as the other text, because they're the same keyframes. But obviously that's a bit early when it's happening at the top, because the line hasn't animated in yet. So I want these keyframes to move. Yeah, so I'm just going to highlight them, move the timeline marker to where I want them to be. So the line stops there. I'm going to go 1, 2, 3 frames ahead, and I'm just going to drag that, so that first keyframe now matches where my timeline marker is. So if I play it all the way through again, yeah, so that would be how you'd start annotating it using your lines. I suppose again you could do another one for this one to say like the did not answer or whatever, but that is a really simple way of chopping up a vector into 3 parts, having it animate in, and then having a little animation using the lines and the fade in of a text. There's so much more you can do with your text. You can animate it letter by letter. You could have like you can have a visual representation. So if it was people that agreed or disagreed, you could have like a thumbs up or a thumbs down. And again, you can get vectors for that. If it was like people who passed it, like achieved a qualification, if it was people who had, it could be anything, and it doesn't have to be a graph either. Like it doesn't have to be a graph or a chart. It's just think about what would be on the screen in your animation and think about how you could chop it up, so how you could make it look different. So if it was the battery, for example, like I said, if you want to do like say you had a bit of footage that you'd recorded and you wanted to make it look like you're doing a bit of filmmaking or whatever, and you wanted to make it look like it was recorded through like a camera. So you would draw your lines all around your screen, yeah, and like you'd have the corner lines on there. Let's just quickly, I'm going a little bit off script here, but never mind. We'll set up a new composite shot and I'll show you what I mean. So you'd have your your lines. So if I just create that and just call that cam, and I just draw a rectangle there, and if I just duplicate that, and the points all wrong with that one. Right, hang on. Transform that rotation. Let's set that to 90 degrees. So you'd have like your lines, but you'd have them all the way around the sort of corners and stuff. Let's duplicate that and drag that. Because they haven't got the anchor point. But you basically set up your scene like that. I can't flip horizontal, can I? To be honest, you could even just draw them in the likes of Photoshop or After Effects, and you'd have them all the way around the edge. But then you could make like the little red circle that flashes in there. And remember, you can just do that by adding a plane. You make it like whatever color you want it to be, and then you get your mask, your ellipse mask. Hold down Shift, and then you'd have that at the top there. Why am I not on the move tool? There we are. And you would add, like, say, recording text in here, so it would just be like that. You just line that up. I'll not draw the rest of the white lines around the outside because I am sort of digressing here, but I'm just giving you ideas on like using the shape tool and adding different effects. It doesn't necessarily have to be used in a full-on animation, but then you would animate your red circle so that it flashes on and off. So you would set your opacity at 100 and then go like 2 frames ahead and have it set on 0, and then you would go 2 frames ahead and you'd have it set on 100. And then you can just duplicate those keyframes and skip a couple of frames ahead. Go to the highlight. Oh, sugar. Highlight them all. Copy. Go to there. Go 2 frames ahead, like that. And obviously that's probably too quick, to be honest. You'd have to mess around with that, but you get the idea, yeah. So you just space out your keyframes so it flashes on and off a bit nicer. You could also do it with the blocks the way we did before, where you just have the block playing sort of over and over. So you edit the time, like you trim it down so it's playing, then not playing, then playing, then not playing. So you could bring in the battery animation that I made before as well, and have that as if it was charging. So you can do like nice overlays using little animations as well. So it can be overlaying footage as well that you've done as like a little effect. Or like I say, you can have like animated graphics, like infographics, so you're trying to explain a point. You can do it where if it's something you've drawn, if you've done some artwork, different parts of it fly in, but as long as it finishes in the right place, it's sort of it's like the building process. So you can have, say, like the background come in, and then like the head of whatever you've drawn, and that could be the parts that animate in, instead of these, like, like these pie charts. It could be that instead. And you can do different effects where like you've got scribble and stuff, which I'm planning to cover the more complicated visual effect in the, like, maybe it's an advanced course, even if it's just like a one-off session, like more advanced techniques. Could be like a full day possibly, or a couple of full days. Definitely on my radar to do it. What I want you guys to have a try with, especially after a day, is chopping up your EPS files, so your vectors, and animating them separately, and then having a little go with the animated lines and animating some text on as well. So that text doesn't necessarily have to fade in. It could come in from the bottom, it could fly in from the side. It could animate. You could do 3 separate text layers, which are all the right ones, but have it animate in one letter at a time, as if it's being typed on. Just a couple of things to think about, and obviously pause the video and go back, because I am going quite fast, but it's because I don't want to run out of time. But the video is there. Obviously my emails are open as well. I'm going to pop the break screen on and just set up for the next sort of bit, because we're going to have another little look at masks, but there's so much garbage going on in this project now that I don't need anymore. So I'm just going to clear some of the stuff out, and I will I'm probably going to grab a drink as well, actually, because I'm quite thirsty. It's a very hot day, so stay hydrated. I shall not be long. I've muted my mic. Sorry. While I'm doing the break, if you guys could fill the survey in, that would be great. I will copy and paste the link into the old chat for you there. Let me know if none of this is making sense as well. Obviously, I know this will give you guys who are watching back and clicking back through, pausing and stuff, a chance to have a little reflect on the stuff we've been doing. So let me know if you're stuck, or if you're not understanding that, and go back over some stuff as well, because we've got we'll have about 40 minutes left. So yeah, just let me know, guys. Okay, got a nice. Hang on, I haven't turned the music off. I found some nice relaxing music for you today. Nothing too upbeat, nothing too strenuous. Everyone just relax, take it nice and easy. I am going to open the blinds a little bit actually, because now I can't really see. That's a bit better. Get some light in. Whew. Right, where were we? Where were we at? Okay, I'm actually just gonna. I'm sort of done with this EPS file now. I'm not gonna export any vectors. I don't think. So I'm just gonna close that once again. I've cleared my workspace. You can still see the chart, but I've cleared all the rest of it by using that folder structure-y sort of thing as well. So hopefully, I would advise you guys doing the same if you haven't, because what you can do is you can have multiple animations in one project, which you can then bring into this editor and they'll just play sort of seamlessly, which is something I'm going to touch on next week, as in how to combine like multiple composite shots, which are like your individual animations that are being handled, but then how to bring them into like say an overall timeline and play them together. I think that's one thing I'm going to look at next week. So we're going to be probably doing a little bits and pieces of all the stuff we've been working on, and how to sort of combine it together into one project. So next week might be a bit of a whistle stop tour, but with that in mind, I'm going to quickly recap on masks, because I did it on week 1, but I don't feel like I did it justice, and I watched the video back and I was like, you made that a bit more complicated than it had to be. It worked, but I don't know if I explained it the best way I possibly could. So we're going to have a little go again, but we're going to utilise the little things we worked on last week, as well as some of the stuff we worked on this week. So all I'm going to do again is create a new composite shot. You will get bored of me saying that, and I'm just going to call it masks. I don't want it to be 30 seconds long. By default, it will be 30 seconds long. You can drop it down frame by frame there, but I find it easier just to have it on, to come in here and type like that. So 5 seconds. 5 seconds is more than enough for the purposes of today. Okay, so masks. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to create a shape. Now the way I'm going to show you masks is I'm going to have it disappear behind a line. So the first thing I'm going to do is create that line. So I'm going to go to the plane. I'm going to make the line white, and I'm going to make the width 20, but I'm going to leave the height on 1080 because I want to create a vertical line. So if I OK that, I've got a plain white line. That's not really doing much. I'm not going to, at the moment, that line I'm not going to animate. I'm just going to leave it exactly how it is. So I'm going to then rename that layer. So right click on it, go up to rename, and I'm going to call that line. I'm just going to call it line, capital letters. I find using capital letters a bit easier when you're naming your layers as well, because this panel here isn't very visible. So sometimes you like sort of like writing on the screen with your eyes glued to it, and I don't want anyone to go blind. So please don't do that. Try and use your capital letters there. Oops, pressed the wrong button. Yeah, so I've got my line. I'm going to now create a shape. So I'm going to do new layer, plane. Instead of calling it new plane 4, I'm going to call it circle. I'm going to call that all caps as well. You can change the color if you want. I'm just going to leave it white, but if you did want to change the color, you press on it there. Yeah, I'm just going to leave it as white. So at the moment, right, well, I've just realized there, right, very important. Sorry, back up. Right click, new layer, plane. Yeah, at the moment it's saved the settings that I had from last time. So this one's going to be 20 width by 1080 height, which is the height of the composition, but only 20 wide. So it's creating that line. I don't want that to happen anymore. So I'm going to rename that circle again. And I'm also going to click match timeline and leave it on white and press OK. So now what that's done is it's created a 1920 by 1080 block. And if you remember from last week, if I hover over this, we've got our mask tool here. Press where that is. So there, if you press and hold, left click and hold on that, you get all the options for the different shapes you can create. For now, I'm just going to go with an ellipse. which is just your circle. And remember, you can click and drag like that and create a free form circle, or you can hold down shift and drag, and that'll create a one that's in the right ratio, like the aspect ratio, so it's an equal circle. So I've got that, and if I go to my selection tool again, so at the moment, if I was to move this left and right, nothing's happening. What the effect I want to generate is to get this circle, when it passes this line, to disappear behind it. Yeah, so we'll just center that again, so it's back where it should be. Now there's a couple of ways to do this. You can do it when you've drawn the shape. So I've physically drawn that with a mask. So I added the new plane, I drew the circle. Yeah, I can add another mask to it. So I could add if I press and hold on that and go back to my rectangle mask and not drag the thing away. Hang on. So zoom out. I'm gonna drag a mask over the right hand side of the frame like that. Now you might be thinking, why have you done that? But if I click on the top one, so if I rename the top mask circle, and if I rename the bottom mask, and can you see I know which one's which, because when I click on them it gives it a little highlight, so it draws a little area around it. So right click, rename, I'm just going to call that one hide, so that's what I'm going to use it for. So if I click on the circle one at the moment and I drag it, obviously it looks like it disappears, but that's because it's white. We don't really want that. We want this one to be not visible. So if I just change that to invert, or is it subtract? Yeah, subtract. And now if I move that circle, can you see it's taken that out? So that mask is now hiding that. So I could get me circle mask, circle under mask, circle, and I could say transform position here, and then go to 1 second and drag the position to the right. It should disappear behind that. Yeah, so it disappears behind that line, which is a good way. You know, you might want it to, you could do the reverse as well, so you could reverse that. So I could swap these keyframes around, drag that on at the start, so at the start it's here instead, and then over time it appears from behind that mask as well, which is another little effect you'll see quite often on the likes of your lower third. So like a little line will come up and then someone's name will pop up from the bottom when they're talking on screen. That's a really little handy trick. So just adding a little mask. So the circle itself is a mask, because it's, remember we created that big horrible block, that white block. So if I just turn the masks off, that's what it's, so I've highlighted an area of that, this circle, using the mask tool. And then I've highlighted another area and set it to subtract, and that then anything in this box, it takes it away, so it removes it. Yeah, so it subtracts it, and then I just have it either animating from in front or behind. That's a slightly, well, it's not more complicated, but that's one way to do it essentially. That's one way to do it, yeah. And the other way to do it, you can do it with an image or you can do it with text. I'm just going to bring in an image that I think I made last week. I believe on the desktop, I created this arrow in Photoshop, which is, it's really good, honestly. Like what a work of art that it is. So I've got my arrow there, yeah. Drag it out that way, a little scale to fit. So I've got my arrow. At the moment, it's not disappearing behind there because it doesn't have a mask applied to it. So what we could do, and the way to probably do this, is to right click, new layer, plane. I'm gonna make a black. I tell you what, hang on. Before I do that, other quite useful tip with this one is if you want to see what's transparent and what's not, if you change your background to checkerboard, so under options, go to checkerboard background, and you can see what's visible and what isn't. So I'm just going to turn that plane off there, because that's the circle one. I don't want that one to come in. So I'm just going to hide that for now, because I'm now bothered about the arrow. So the other way to do it, when it's just a shape that you haven't drawn in HitFilm Express, is we're going to do something with a plane again. So we're going to be using the alpha channel, and that sounds really complicated, but I'll show you how easy it is, to be honest. So I've got my layer, and now as this layer goes to the right, when it hits that line, I want it to be hidden as if it's disappeared behind it. Yeah. So click on my arrow, or right click underneath it, sorry, in this blank space. New layer, plane. I'm going to set the plane to be black. I'm going to call this hide arrow, and I'm just going to OK it. I'm just going to shift it off to the right hand side, and I'm also going to line it up with the edge of that line, something like that. Yeah. And then I'm literally going to turn that layer off. So that hide arrow layer is now turned off. Now at the moment it's still not doing anything, so that arrow still isn't disappearing. Don't worry about that. So I've added my plane in here, which is just a black box that is lined up with where that white line is in the middle. Yeah. And what I want to do next is go back to my arrow layer once I've turned that hide arrow off. Drop down my arrow layer, go down to effects, and there's a little plus on there. It'll bring up the box with all the effects, and there's about 100 in here, and some of them are paid for add-ons, as in you have to buy them. Others are just built into the program. So what I would do at this point is I'm just going to type in the top set, the word set, S-E-T, and it says recent because I've used it recently, but if you haven't, it'll be under key in matte enhancement and set matte, and it'll have it in brackets layer only. Don't worry about that. So set matte, and then what that does is under the arrow, now I've got this effects box, which inside that has this set matte. And if I drop that down, it'll ask me what the source layer is. So I'm telling this here that I want to use another layer as its mask layer. So that layer I drew before in this portion here is called hide arrow. So the source layer would be hide arrow. And then I want to change the blend mode to subtract. So I want source layer, hide arrow, matte source alpha, blend mode, subtract. And now if I click back on my arrow and back onto my selection tool, when I drag it behind, when I drag it over to this area where I've drawn that shape before, it'll just disappear behind it like that, which is a really cool effect. And can you see, if I scroll in, actually I haven't actually quite lined up that black box with the edge of the white arrow. So at the moment it looks like it's going in the middle. Now that is an effect you might want. You might want it to cut through something, as in directly through the center. But what you might also want it, what you might be looking at to do is have it right on the edge. So if that's not a massive problem, to be totally honest, because I can just click back on my hide arrow layer, and I can just ever so gently drag that out so that it then hits the edge. Yeah, so if I go back to my arrow and move that now and zoom in again, can you see it's disappearing when it hits that edge? Yeah. Again, it's not perfect. Can you see it's still a little bit off actually, that one? So if I go back to my hide arrow again, and just click on that and just give it a nudge that way. So I'm just using the arrow keys on my keyboard to nudge it left and right. So can you see I can nudge it further right, or I can nudge it further left. I'm just going to zoom in, so right in here, and just nudge it to the left a little bit like that. And go back to my arrow. Yeah. Just nudge that right once, and then at this point, this is where you would animate it happening. I found it works quite nicely both ways, to be honest. In terms of whether it's starting on the screen and disappearing off, or it's starting off the screen and coming in. You can do both. You could, for argument's sake, I will just hide all these layers. And I will create a new layer. In fact, I'm just going to duplicate the line. So the line that I made originally, I'm just going to duplicate that and drag it to the top. Turn it back on. Okay, so my line, I'm going to animate a little bit. So I'm going to go down to the line and transform. I'm going to unlock my scale, and I'm going to take the, oh, hang on, not that way. I'm going to take the vertical this time. Last time I had it coming animating from side to side, so it was growing from side to side. This time I want to be growing up and down, so that's the other value here on the right hand side. But I've turned the link, so make sure that link's not on. Right, hang on. Make sure that link's not on, and that this property's on 100, and this property's the one you want to change. Yeah, so where it's grown from. I don't particularly in this instance need to change the anchor point because I'm quite happy for it to animate from the center. If I did want it to animate from, say, the bottom, I would just have to move my anchor point to where I wanted it to animate from. So if I wanted to animate from the bottom of the frame, I'd have to move my anchor point to the bottom of the frame, which now it doesn't seem to want to do for some reason. I imagine I could do this, and then that's why, right? Okay, so if I then shift my anchor point like that, I'm going to zoom in just to do it, and then if I change my anchor point to there like that, change that back to scale to fit, and drag that to the bottom, that would then be animating from the bottom of the frame. So you could have it pop up like that, which is fine. So you would set that to 0, yeah, and then so you'd have your scale on 0. You'd set a keyframe. Let's go, I don't know, to 1 second. Yeah, let's have it animating over a second, and then have the scale to be 100, like that. So change that scale to 100. So what that's done is it's sent a line animating up through the middle. Yeah, so that's fine. I've got an animated line. Yeah, great. And then what I might want to do next is have something animate out from behind that line either side, so it could pop in that way or that way. And to do that, all I would do next is right click, new plane. I want to make that white. I'm going to call this, I'll make a star, why not? We haven't done a star yet. Press and hold on my mask tool, go down to star mask, click and drag out a star like that. Change some of the properties so it's a little bit rounder, and maybe add another couple of points to it as well. Actually, you know what? No, I think we'll go with, it's a triangle now. 5, yeah, and just have like a nice round star there. So close that star menu. So I've got my star. Go back to my selection tool. I should just be able to sort of drag this star around. I might want to change my anchor point on this one so that it's in the middle. So if I go down to transform and then anchor point, I'll drag this so that anchor point there, that white this little doodad here, this thing here, I want that in the middle of my star. So I'll drag that across there like that, and the reason is that's where it's going to move from. That's where it's going to, so say if I wanted to rotate it, it's going to rotate from the middle, yeah, rather than it rotating from where it was before, which was somewhere down here. So changing your anchor point is important because it's like, it's where the animation is going to take place from. So imagine it like a pin in the middle of it. So that's where you want that to be. So I might want this to start over here, yeah, and then I might want, as that line, so that line's animating in, yeah, so that line sort of pops up from the bottom, and then when that hits the top, I might want that to start animating out from behind a mask here, which I can do if I add a new plane. So new layer, plane, I'm going to make this one black, and I'm going to call this hide star, and then I'm just going to shrink this down with the scale a little bit. So I'm going to unlink my scale, and I'm going to take that down so it's about there, and just drag it across so it's about there, and drag it up a little bit as well, like that. Okay, And then what we need to do is turn that hide star layer off. Go back to my star plane. So this is the star, yeah. Drop that down. Add an effect in and go to set matte. So just type in set and that'll bring that up. So under my star layer, it'll have an effect which will be set matte. I want the source to be hide star and I want it to be subtract. Yeah, so now anything on, because that hide star plane is only on this side of the composition. So anything behind that, yeah, so anything behind that is hidden. And I've just lined it up with the edge of that arrow, yeah, so that anything can disappear and appear from behind it. So at the point that that line animates in, so I want to find that bit there. So at the point that that line hits the top is when I want the star to start animating. So we'll go to there, that's when it hits, so I'll go one frame after, and then I want my star layer, and I want to go to transform, and I want to go to position, and then maybe go to 1, so that's where I'm having it start, so then we'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 frames, and we'll have it come into there. So at the moment, if I just play that through, yeah, that sort of pings out quite quickly. And then I might want to also have it rotate a couple of times as well. So if I set the rotation there to be 0, 0, 0, 0, and then by the time it gets to here, I want it to have rotated 3 times. So you see it does a little spin in, and I might want to slow that down. So these 2 end keyframes, I'll highlight them, just drag them out a little bit. So that gives me a little bit more time in between them. It does a little bit of a weird rotation. I think that's something to do with the anchor point as well. So I'll just have a little look at that. Or we could, remember, highlight these, and if we do keyframe temporal interpolation and we just change that to smooth. Do I need to preview this because it is a bit jagged? It's a little bit like a throne star now. We've gone a little bit ninja. The temporal interpolation, we'll do smooth on that as well. So maybe 3 is too much. So maybe on that keyframe we can just do 2. Maybe 3's having it come in a little bit too fast. Yeah, so just as like a nice little spin in, so that, let's preview that. Yeah, so that spins in. Now that could be text. I've done a star just for the crack, just to show you guys how to do a star. That could be text. It could be, like I say, the line doesn't have to be vertical. The line could be horizontal. You'll see it quite often in like documentaries and different TV shows. When someone's sitting down doing like a talking head interview, you call it, their name will pop up along the bottom. But the more common ways to do it now is like a little line will pop up, or like a box will appear, and then the text will appear as if it's coming from behind it, and that sort of thing. So it's all just little visual effects that you can do, but it's all just little animations using different shapes or different vectors that people have drawn. That's how you create that mask effect. So this bit is really, really important, because that'll take your animations, and I will go over it again next week, because like I say, I have a plan to build like a little mini project from some of the vectors that we've got. So probably from some of these vectors, but also like I'm going to build it in sort of 3 parts. I'm going to make 3 separate pre-compositions that we then combine together in the timeline, just to give you guys an idea of how you would get your project together. Anyone who's used After Effects before, which I know a few of you guys probably have, it's slightly different, because you would normally do that all in one. You would do the same thing in After Effects. It's called a pre-composition, basically, and all a pre-composition is like what we've done with a composite shot. What I actually prefer about HitFilm Express is it's similar to Premiere, and it has a timeline, so you can bring your pre-compositions into a video editing timeline. Whereas After Effects doesn't really work so well when you're previewing your video back. So if you've got like a 15-minute animation, there's no way you're going to be able to preview it all in After Effects very easily without like your computer's CPU just setting on fire. Very clunky program, very good but very clunky After Effects. Film Express tends to be a little bit better. You are a bit more limited with what you can do in terms of animation, but it does work really well. But hopefully, I really want you guys to have a go at using the set matte effect, because it's dead easy to use once you have a go. One thing to remember with it, the plane that you're using to hide it, so that hide star, which is, if I zoom out, just a block that I've drawn over that part of the frame, over that part of the canvas, that needs to be turned off. So if that's turned on, it's just going to be a big black square. We don't want that. The other important thing to remember, so on my star layer, when I go down to effects, these are the settings. So I've the source layer is the hide star, which is that square that I dropped over there. That needs to be aligned with whatever you want the object to appear from behind. So that's aligned with that line that I've created there. So you see that the blue line is in line with the edge of that white one. On your set matte settings, you want the source layer to be the mask that you created, that you've got now turned off. And you want the settings to be on matte source is alpha, because if you don't have it on alpha, it's going to start doing all sorts of weird and wacky stuff, which I can probably show you actually if I just take it back. It'll look a bit strange. But if you have it on off, you won't see it. If you have it on full, it'll not reappear. Saturation and all these ones have to do with the color. So you want to make sure your matte source is on alpha, and your blend mode you want on subtract. If you have it on add, it's going to do, again, something a bit weird. If you have it on replace, it's also going to do something a bit weird, so subtract. Yeah, if you invert it, what that does, what the invert button does, is it swaps it round. So at the moment it's saying, okay, anything in this area I want to hide. Yeah, so I want to hide that. If you have it on invert, it's anything in that area. Okay, anything in this little area I want to show. So if I go through, can you see it does the opposite? So invert is a way to just swap it round. So what might be quite useful when you might use your invert setting is if you wanted to have two masks. So if you wanted to mask two objects from behind this line, you might very well duplicate your hide star layer. Or actually, you wouldn't even have to do that. You could add a text layer in here, and you could just call it star, and just have it sort of start here, get it? No one? Not on a Friday anyway. And drag it underneath that, and then I could add a set matte to this. So I could, on my new text layer that I've added in here, I could add a effect, and that effect could be set matte. And if I drop down the set matte and a source layer, hide star, subtract, but then I have it inverted. Now it's saying I'm only showing stuff in this area because I've got it inverted on the text layer. So now as that star appears, where's the first keyframe on my star? There. So when that appears, if I go to my new text, I might want to say, okay, your position is here, and then if I go along to when that star animates in, I can move my position to here. I might want to just bring it down so it's in line, so copy that. Have it appear from the other side, so they sort of looks like they're overlapping, but I'm not having to create multiple masks. I'm still using that hide star layer, but when I've added the text, I've added the set matte to that text, I've just inverted it so that instead of it hiding in that area, it's only shown in that area, but that's specific to the text because it's inverted on the text. But if I drop it down on the star plane, it's not inverted there. So that you can use the same mask layer on multiple other objects and things that are coming in. Yeah, so they just play through as one. So I just set the arm scale to fit. Hang on, let's just zoom out a little bit, and I will also add a new layer in just to be the background. So if I just add a black plane in and drag that to the bottom, that's a black background there. Now this animation isn't perfect, but it was just a demonstration of how to have things appear from behind a line. Yeah, and that you can use the same mask layer to mask and hide multiple objects. So you don't have to, every time you don't have to create a new plane and drag it in the area and turn it off. I'm just using that hide star layer, this thing here that's lined up with that edge. And I'm having one thing appear from behind it, which is normal, and then I'm having the text appear from the other side because I've inverted it. Yeah, so it works similar to how masks work in Photoshop and Photopea as well. I really want you to have a go at that part in a bit of detail as well, and I can advise on it because it is really, when you first do it, it's really confusing. And I think, to be honest, if I'm thinking back, I even made a bit of a mess of it in the first session because I forgot to change the. I do it all the time. I forgot to change the blend mode to subtract on the set matte effect. It's just, you know, you miss one drop down and the program doesn't understand what you're trying to do. So you're looking at it thinking, well, that's not right, and obviously it's not, but you haven't set the settings to be right. Hopefully the mask and stuff makes sense. Again, I will cover it again next week, but I'm going to try and do a full sort of project next week. It's not going to be amazing, the animation I create next week, but it's going to be all the little mini compositions that I make. I'm going to show you how to make each individual part of an animation that you might want to do, and then combine that together on an overall timeline, and then probably export it as well. And just quickly, because we've got about 4 minutes left, I will open up the 2 seconds. I will open up the one that I made earlier and just recap on how to export as well, just so you guys get another look at that. So if I go back to my chart one, I think it's composite shot 3, isn't it? No, it's not. What an idiot. It's that one. Okay, so if I wanted to export, I would scroll along. Now, doing a standard export, it'll export the length of the composition. So to check that, if I go down to this cog in the bottom left here, it's above a magnet icon. Click that. I can see the length there, so the duration is how long it is, 5 seconds. Now I've managed to animate this to roughly fit 5 seconds. You could change this if you wanted it to be shorter or longer, so you could type a number in there, or you can mark an in and out point if you remember. So you've got your in and out there. So if I mark an out point, say shortly after that sad text comes in, at say 4 seconds, if I come over to here, hover over it for long enough, it will tell me what it's called. Out point, yeah. Click that. Now this area that's blue there is what's going to be exported. So if I go to next to the export button, little arrow, add to queue, into out areas. So between the in and the out areas. Let me just delete the old one, and it's just called composite shot 2. But if I click on the output, it'll show me where it's going to save it, and I'll just save it as animated chart. .mp4. It's going to be a YouTube 1080p HD, perfectly fine. Start exporting, and away it'll go. I'll get some kind of green progress bar hopefully. But yeah, guys, like I keep saying, let me know how you get on. If you're not getting some of the parts of hiding different bits or animating different bits in, like the lines or the vectors especially, I think that might be the thing we struggle with the most, because you're gonna have to probably use free alternatives if you haven't got Illustrator. Anything you can open a vector file in, any program you've got where you can open a vector file in, you should be able to separate them out into separate PNGs like I've done. If you are really struggling with that aspect, give me a shout and I'll try and work through some of the free stuff. So that's finished. If I click on it, it should take me to the file. So animated chart, and then I can probably open that up and just play it. Yeah, it always lags a little bit when you first open it, so I'll play it through again. I'll probably loop it actually, can I? Repeat. Yeah, simple as that. nothing to that animation really. Like I say, I spent about 10 minutes doing that one. But you can see the little bits of motion blur that come in there as well. That animated line, it spices up having just a boring chart on the screen. So you can do it that way as well. If there's something you need to display in some way that's a little bit boring or not the best to look at, you can have it animate in, and it makes it a little bit more exciting. I would say. Not particularly that one, like not a grey chart with white text, but you get the idea. You can change the colours, and you can have a mess around. So yeah, I mean, we've done a whole different bunch of stuff. I haven't gone back over the keyframe easing as much as I did last week. So last week we did the shape test where we were animating them differently and having them sort of warp and smooth in, smooth out. Yeah, we will again be covering some of that next week when I try and do like an overall project. You might do a little bit of motion tracking again as well. But yeah, have a go with the shapes, have a go with the masks. I've included a link to that EPS file on the Google Drive, which is in the description of the video. Download it, see if you can chop the bits up. Well, like I say, worst comes to worst, you can take it into Photoshop and get the PNGs from there as well, or Photop. That'll work and all. But if you guys can fill that survey in for us. It's 12 o'clock now, so we are sort of done. I'm gonna save my project. I'm just gonna call it test shapes and masks, and I'm gonna close down my Hit Film Express. And if you guys could just please, there's me arrow, my beautiful arrow. If you guys could please fill in that survey, that would be fantastic. And I will leave the stream on for a few minutes if anyone's got any questions as well. So cheers for joining once again, and let me know how you get on. If you do any work and export it as well, send it across. It would be good to see. Champion, right guys, like I say, I'll drop that screen on with the general links and that, and then I'll drop that nice relaxing music on again, and then I'll leave the stream running for a little bit. Okie doke. Right, speak to you soon. Been a pleasure as always. Bye-bye.